1, 2, 3, Steve, go wild and crazy!
So, that's very bright. Hi everyone, my name is Donald and I'm a lecturer in public health at the University of Glasgow. Lecturer in public health in Glasgow. I am the equivalent of, you know if you get like a bottle of beer and there's a little sticker on it saying drink responsibly, like, you know it has a purpose, you know it's doing the best it can within the confines of its wee existence, but you also know it's not really going to win. I am the human equivalent of do not tumble dry. It's all kind of uphill. So my main research interest is in dementia, which is tricky to get laughs out of. And so more specifically, I'm interested in Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common type of dementia. And so Alzheimer's, if you're not necessarily that familiar, it's associated with cognitive declines, with things like memory and reasoning and reaction time, and eventually neurological problems, and eventually death. I told you it was going to be hard to laugh out of. And it's basically just a bit of shit, Alzheimer's disease. That's really the gist of it. And its impact was really vividly illustrated to me a couple of weeks ago, when, completely true story, I was getting my car insurance renewed, right? Kind of a mundane start, but so phoned up Admiral, I was like, hi. And the guy went, boy, so you're a researcher, what do you do? I said, I study Alzheimer's disease. And he went, you know, that's so good because that's really affected my family. It's a huge impact on my friends and family. Have 20 quid off your premium. Why we do it, ladies and gentlemen. And it's totally true. And but so Alzheimer's disease, it's something that we all want answers for. It's something we all want results for, and that's right and good. And again, that was quite vividly illustrated to me when I went off to do my first postdoctoral fellowship after my PhD. And I went off to Baltimore, which is a whole other stand-up, but we're going to get into it. So I went off to do a visa interview, and if you've never had the pleasure, it's basically like a 10-minute grilling about just why you're coming to the States, and just checking you're legit. And the guy went, so what are you coming to the States for? And I went, well, I'm studying Alzheimer's disease. And he went, aha! But we cracked it. It was in the news, it was on the radio like an hour ago. Alzheimer's, we beat it, we cracked it. So this was September 2013. And you may or may not have noticed we haven't quite cracked it, sadly. And I was really happy with my evidence-based, expansive response. So, no we didn't. So the main thing, one problem with studying Alzheimer's disease is that it's very, very difficult to study. So say someone comes into the doctor with hypertension or high cholesterol or a broken arm, it's usually quite easy to identify. There's kind of a clear sort of test. Whereas with Alzheimer's disease, there's quite a lot to kind of exclude, so it can actually be quite difficult to get clean cases for research. And so what I tend to do is research cognitive abilities, so things like memory, reasoning, reaction time within everybody, because they have exactly the same risk factors for worse cognitive abilities within the general population as risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. So, you know, every cigarette, every pint of gin, every kind of rubbish thing that you kind of do will have a negative effect on your brain's structure and function. So, for example, every Mark Wahlberg film, sorry, not the Departed. And over and above that, we then look at brain structure and function and try to understand what parts of the brain are changing or are actually the kind of biological substrates of this cognitive decline in Alzheimer's disease. There are quite a number of ways you can do this. So it's not like an X-ray where it's just one big picture of the brain and that's you. There are loads of different types of MRI methods. And one that I tend to use is functional magnetic resonance imaging, MRI. And but there are loads of different ways to study Alzheimer's disease in that context. So what they might do with fMRI, for example, is you might put someone in a scanner and you'll see where the blood's flowing in response to different tasks. So for example, say I were to do a memory test with fMRI, you might find that certain blood flows go to the hippocampus, which is a little seahorse-shaped structure in the deep brain. Similarly, if I were to do an emotionally evocative task, like my first ever stand-up, first ever stand-up, or listen to a particularly powerful ballad, or watch a Prime Minister cry on live television, which emotion? You might find that the blood flows to the amygdala, which is a kind of an emotional centre of the brain, which is shaped like a little almond. Now, there are a lot of different problems associated with functional MRI. The statistics are very complicated. It's not like a simple correlation. It's actually quite a different kettle of fish, or rather more specifically, a different bucket of dead salmon. So there's a really nice study from the States where what they did, exactly as I was saying, they put the participant sample in an fMRI scanner and showed them a range of different cognitive tasks. And they found specific parts of the brain lit up as they were doing these different tasks, these different processes. So amazing stuff. But the downside was that their study sample was a single dead salmon. So that kind of shows you that it can be quite difficult if you're not careful with your statistics and your analysis to get all sorts of kind of crazy results if you're not transparent in exactly how you're analysing your data. And that can kind of extend to genetics too, which I also research in the context of Alzheimer's. So for example, say you read a headline like, we found the gene for steak bake intake, or whatever, we found the gene for X, we found the gene for Y, we found the gene for Marmite intake, that was a genuine one. And it's really good, it's an ad, it's really good. Anyway, so we found the gene for this, that, the next thing. And they've probably not, in most cases. What they have probably found is one or two or three common mutations called single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs, or SNP if you're politically minded. Which are difficult to kind of parse out. But anyway, so they haven't really found the gene for steak bake intake, or the gene for being a gangster. They found one or two little signals which increase the risk of that trait, steak bake intake, a tiny little amount. And over and above that, in epidemiology, which is the study of basically who gets what and why, it's difficult to find causality. So we've all heard correlations or causation. But there's a really good website called Spurious Correlations. And that's just a list of cool correlations. For example, you can explain 70% of the rate of drownings in the United States by the number of films that Nicolas Cage has been in. Probably not causal, maybe. Also, there's a tremendous correlation between murder rates in New York City and ice cream sales. Is it causal? Are people getting jacked up on Soleros and murking motherfuckers? Probably not. It's heat. So if the heat goes up, some people buy ice lollies more, some people murder people more. Probably not the same people. So finally, I work in another problem in epidemiology is that with Alzheimer's in particular, you're dealing with self-reported data. So things that people have told you about their lives. And that can be tricky because they're not necessarily that reliable. So I work in the UK Biobank cohort of 500,000 people. And a couple of examples we've spotted include that of the 500,000 people, 10,000 claim to have 28 scones every week, like of their entire lives. There's a really, really nice detail on the Biobank website that of the 500,000 people, X thousand claim to be vegan. So, no meat, no cheese, no dairy, great. And there's a little detail which says, 10% of these people told us earlier in the day they had bacon for breakfast. I don't know. So the three things I'll kind of leave you with are Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia. Again, everyone knows that. Secondly, the risk factors for worse memory, reasoning and reaction time and all that are exactly the same as for Alzheimer's disease, and that's don't smoke, don't drink too much, try and stay active. And finally, that for most cases, the risk factors are cumulative. There's no silver bullet. And finally, that we still haven't cracked it, but we're going to try to. So, cheers. Thank you.